Good evening, everyone. I am Rachel Jasmine Aracena, and along with me are my group mates, Ma'am Alan May Gapedo, Ma'am Catherine Palconet, Sir Leonard Brian Gonzalez, and Sir Frederick Rizal. We are Group 2, and we are here to present Chapter 5, the production, and Chapter 6, the cost. So I am the first reporter. I will be discussing the production. So production is the process by which a firm transforms inputs such as labor, capital, and materials into outputs, goods, or services. A firm's goal is often to produce as efficiently as possible, to maximize output given cost or minimize cost for a desired level of output. A firm uses a production process to transform inputs or factors of production into outputs. So firm use many types of inputs. Most of these inputs can be grouped into three broad categories. So capital is the services provided by long-lived inputs such as lands, buildings, such as factories and stores, and equipment such as machines and trucks. Labor is the human services such as those provided by managers, skilled workers such as architects, economists, engineers, and plumbers, and less skilled workers such as custodians, construction laborers, and assembly line workers. Last is the materials, the natural resources and raw goods, oil, water, and wet, and processed products, aluminum, plastic, paper, and steel. The different ways in which inputs can be transformed into output are summarized in the production function. The relationship between the quantities of inputs used and the maximum quantity of output that can be produced. Here, we can see the basic form of the production function, which is written as Q equals F of L and K. This means that output is a function of two main inputs, labor and capital. In production, there are two time periods that we need to understand, the short run and the long run. So in this part, I will be discussing the short run production. In the short run, there are at least one fixed input, such as capital, while other inputs like labor can be changed. This means that a firm can increase or decrease its output by adjusting the variable inputs but cannot immediately change all resources. The short-run production focus on how output changes when only some inputs are variable, helping firms understand the relationship between labor and output within a limited time period. The total product function. As you can see here, Table 5.1 shows the relationship between labor and output. When the firm's capital is fixed, the firm has 8 workbenches and its fixed capital, and labor is measured by the number of workers, while output refers to the number of computers assembled per day. At first, as more workers are added, the total output increases. For example, one worker produces 5 computers, 2 produce 18, and 3 produce 36. However, because the capital is fixed, production reaches its maximum output of 110 computers per day with 10 to 11 workers. If more than 11 workers are hired, production decreases since they start getting in each other's way, leading to inefficiency. So this table helps explain how adding workers affects total output and introduces the concept of marginal product labor and the average product labor. So this is the marginal product of labor, or MPL. It refers to the additional output produced when one more worker is added, while keeping other inputs like capital constant. It shows how much extra production a firm gains from hiring an additional worker. At first, the marginal product usually increases because workers can specialize and work more efficiently, but after a certain point, it starts to decrease as too many workers share the same fixed capital, causing inefficiency. The average product of labor. The firm determines how extra labor affects the average product of labor, the ratio of output to the amount of labor used to produce that output. Based on the table 5.1, when the number of workers increases from 1 to 2, the change in labor is 1, and the change in output is 13, because output rises from 5 to 18 computers. So therefore, the marginal product of labor is 13. So meaning one additional worker produces 13 more computers. How to get the average product of labor? Average product of labor equals Q over L. So for example, here in the table 5.1, the output total product of labor is 18 and divide labor 2. So the answer is 9. So 9 is the average product of labor. So we have the law of diminishing marginal returns. This law states that when a firm continues to increase the use of one input, like labor, while keeping all other inputs and technology constant, the additional output of the extra production from each new worker will eventually decrease. This means that at first, adding more workers greatly increases total production, but after a certain point, each additional worker contribute less and less to output. So this is why the marginal product of labor curve eventually slopes downward, because as only one input increases and the others stay fixed, the productivity of that input starts to diminish over time. Earlier, I discussed the short-run production where at least one input such as capital is fixed while other inputs like labor can be changed. So now let's move on to the long-run production. In the long run, all inputs become variable, meaning that both labor and capital can be adjusted. Firms have enough time to change their production scale. They can build new facilities, buy more machines, or hire more workers to increase output. So, in this period, there are no fixed inputs. One producers can choose the most efficient combination of resources to minimize costs and maximize production. Isoquant, a curve that shows the efficient combinations of labor and capital that can produce the same level of output. The isoquant shows the smallest amount of input that will produce a given amount of output. If a firm reduces either input, it could not produce as much output. So if the production function is Q equals F of L and K, then the equation of an isoquant where output is held constant. As you can see, the table 5.2 shows if the capital is constant at 2 units, one worker produces 14 units of output. 3 workers produces 24 units, and 6 workers produce 35 units. Thus, if the firm holds one factor constant and varies another factor, it moves from one isoquant to another. In contrast, if the firm increases one input while lowering other appropriately, the firm stays on the single isoquant. Isoquant represent the different combinations of labor and capital that can produce the same amount of output. So each isoquant line corresponds to a specific output of level, such as Q equals 24 or Q equals 35. And S1 is from the origin, the higher the output. So it represents since more inputs are being used. So for example, at the point E, the firm uses 1 unit of labor and 2 units of capital to produce 14 units of output. So when the labor increased to 3 units, while capital stays as 2, moving to point C, output goes up to 24 units. So, increasing labor again to 6 units to point F raises the output further to 35 units. So this means that when a capital is fixed and labor increases, the firm output also rises. However, to reach higher isoquant or output levels, the firm must keep adding more labor. So this illustrates the law of variable proportions where additional labor leads to higher output but the rate of increase may eventually slow down.